So, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to take a very unique look at what I consider the best junk food brand of my generation. Now, for Americans who are listening to this podcast, you might get confused. When you hear the word Hostess in the United States, you think obviously of the cake brand, snack cakes, different stuff. But in Canada, Hostess potato chips ruled the roost in Canada for more of a half a century as the best potato chip value out there. Now, it was the leading brand in Canada from its creation pretty well in 1935 until the early 90s, and they retained their number one position, through the Mulrooney years, but increased competition from U.S. companies kind of killed it off. Now, Hostess, big problem, they suffered serious brand erosion in the early 1990s with the introduction of various, upscale brands such as Kettle Chips and Miss Vicky's. Now, the brand pretty well disappeared in 1986 when it was absorbed by Lay's or Frito-Lay company in the States. And in 2019, there is some Hostess product out there, including its very infamous Hickory Sticks, and some small stores still make the brand, but it's pretty well non-existent. Now, Hostess in Canada was formed in 1935 when the genius known as Edward Snyder began cooking chips on his mother's kitchen stove in Breslau, Ontario, near Kitchener. Now, potato chips remained, a small part of the snack food market all in the 50s when snack food in general became more widely available. Now, in 55, Snyder sold his company to E.W. Van Stone, who expanded the company greatly before selling it to General Foods, a very popular brand through the years, in 1959. Soon after, Hostess grew to become the number one brand throughout this period, mainly because of distribution channels and shelf space. It was seen in small communities, large communities. A Hostess in a bottle of pop was quite normal. They could be taken to the beach. There was a small bags and all the great flavors, including regular salt and vinegar, dill pickle, ketchup, barbecue, sour cream. The packaging itself was just tremendous, so easily recognizable, and this was well before the Hostess Munchies showed up, which was a few years before. Now, the Hostess brand had simple graphics and color schemes. Now, for years, they kept to the basic three blue, yellow, and deep red packages, which were, of course, regular salt, vinegar, and barbecue. Now, here's how to change the industry, even to now. The power of their brand was so exclusive that competitors usually use the same color scheme for their products to compete. And that you see that in the States quite often as well, because, in the States, regular chips are normally blue, salt vinegar has a specific color, and ketchup has a specific color. Now, here was some of the big errors in the company's history which led to its immediate downfall. In the mid-1970s, Hostess decided to expand its lineup and introduce 3 new flavors: orange, cherry, and grape. And I remember these flavors well because they would stay on the shelves. Nobody would even attempt to buy them. And they only disappeared, a few months later. Should have disappeared the first moment were on the shelves. Now, newer introductions followed, including the great sour cream and onion. And it was a huge success. And, dill pickle and ketchup in different flavors followed later. And the hickory sticks, like I told you about. Now, these are hickory smoke flavored potato sticks, which mimicked kind of a dry French fry. They were quite good, and they went great with Pepsi. Coke was not a good drink with Hostess chips. Pepsi, and ironically, with Pepsi taking over the Hostess company later on. Now, in 1981, the 3 most significant people in Hostess history showed up. The mascots known as the Munchies. Now, they were used as advertisements and appeared on the chip packaging. And the Munchies were the 3 friendly colors of goblins, red, orange, and yellow. Which is great about this. At the time, too, Hostess changed from the bingo and different promotions in the 1970s to sports, movie cards and stuff, WWE, movies, later on, Star Trek, Next Generation, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. It was quite interesting because you bought a 65 or 75 cent bag of Hostess. You could get anything. You could get sports cards, movie cards, rock and roll cards. There was always something going on. Now, they helped bring corn chips to Canada first time in 1987, and Doritos as well in a cooperative agreement with the Frito-Lay, a future purchaser. Then, of course, Ruffles, Tostitos, and Cheetos followed nearly after. Now, in 1988, the company merged with Frito-Lay, called itself Hostess Frito-Lay. And 1992 was the final death knell, where they bought full ownership of the company by buying out General Foods' remaining interest. Now, rebranding of the Hostess products have gone on, of course. Taquitos made to become Zesty Doritos. Cheddar and nacho flavor Crunchits were supplanted by the crunchy Cheetos. And, it wasn't the same though. Even now, when you see a Frito-Lay on the shelf, it's not the same, because Frito-Lay has no personality. Hostess chips had personality. The color schemes were tremendous. The promotions were tremendous, and it was always a fun thing. They would always say, "Oh, there's one of these in a potato chip bag," but how they drew more young people in. Sometimes if you had two of the collectibles in a bag, it wasn't against the grain to see two or even three insert items in it. But it's like this: if you bought junk food, you don't see, hockey cards and chocolate or whatever. That was a big thing for kids back in the 60s and 70s to get the chips. But by the 80s, getting free stuff besides the pleasure of the chips. And they were covered in the plastic that protected the card. And a lot of these cards are quite collectible now. So, now, if you have a chance to go on YouTube, there's a lot of Hostess related items and collectibles out there. I think the most significant set for me, and this is a shout out to my good friend Kevin B in Moncton, the Star Trek series, because you could also win certain prizes like inserts, Star Trek The Next Generation, or Star Trek Canada magazine. It was quite a stuff. But for me, the dill pickle and ketchup really stands out. I know Yum Yum chips are very comparable to the Hostess dill pickle, but still not there. But the ketchup chips were the greatest. Frito-Lay, yeah, it's very similar, but not the same. It was Canada special. You get a couple of bags of chips at a movie. You would buy 2 bags because it was easy to carry. It was pretty well inexpensive, not the crazy $1.69 for the same size now. But it wasn't. This is kind of weird. There were better in the smaller bags than the big bags. The small bags had a little bit more salt, a little bit more punch, and we adopt them as our chip du jour in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I still miss walking in to a grocery store or convenience store and seeing the new Hostess card promotion on the bags. When I was a young journalist for the Dalhousie News, I would always have a bag of Hostess nearby in a long press conference or whatever. It became a running joke. I used to trade with the fellow journalists of the Hostess promo cards or collectibles while I was at this press conference. So, but on this cold Sunday day, I wish I could wish you all a trip in DeLorean to go back and have a Pepsi and a Hostess chip on me, and go to a drive-in either in Beresford or Mountain View up in Attleville. Hostess was part of its time. We don't see bubblegum in baseball card packs anymore. We don't see the tall Pepsi bottles or the crushed bottles or whatever. And I miss it. I miss the Hostess Munchies. They were friends of ours. They gave us a lot of friendship and pleasure, because when you shared a bag of chips, that was when you were poor growing up, especially in northern New Brunswick. The Hostess chips mean a lot because it was good value. The size of the bag you could share. A bag could be shared by 2 people, and were tasty, and were part of home, part of who we were. So I wish everybody a good evening, and just remember, if you have any Hostess chip bags as your collectibles, keep on it. And notice how the bags chip from like the paper foil of the 70s to the kind of plastic style of the 80s. I think the bags in the 70s were great, but they were so easily perforated, they couldn't keep their, what do you call, their quality. And by the way, if you can still find it, smoky bacon. You try that for a while. If you ever tried smoky bacon, it's comparable with the old Dutch, as we say. Anyway, on this great day, we wish you a nice evening. Keep your stick in the ice. Bye.